Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show hosted by ID3. The Impact of Educational Leadership is an American podcast talk show in Dallas, Texas. ID3 gives an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to student success while exploring relationship and family issues in diverse settings.
All right. Thank you for joining us again for another night of the Impact of Educational Leadership. I'm your host, ID3. Tonight we have a very special guest and panelist, the Honorable Dan Mishgay. Mr. Mishgay, please say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here tonight.
All right. Thank you. We're so enthralled to have you here this evening. Tonight's subject is an intricate one. Why should parents buy in more to public schools? Research suggests that low-income, non-white students in urban areas tend to do better if enrolled in charter schools instead of traditional public schools. Of course, there are exceptions, so we can't predict what certainty that a particular child will do better in Pacific charter or traditional public schools. However, not all charter schools are outstanding. In the suburbs, for example, the evidence is that they apparently do no better than traditional public schools, but they have been shown to improve the education of disadvantaged or inner city children at a scale more throughout the years, the last 20 years or so. Charter schools are publicly funded, but not bound by many of the rules that constrain traditional public schools. The organizational structure of TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, Incorporated, has equipped school board trustees with the necessary policies and procedures to better protect students, teachers, and staff members, the true stakeholders invested in public school. Tonight we will delve into a discussion with the Honorable Dan Mishgay about why does he believe that the reform movement is positive or negative.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show hosted by ID3.
The Honorable Dan Mishgay, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing well. If I can comment on that, I would say first, you really have to be clear about what you mean by reform. So if by reform you mean support for home rule or support for vouchers or advocating for charter schools, then or the A through F system, well, I've actually been opposed to all of those things. But if you mean by reform the kinds of things that we've done in Dallas ISD, like our ACE program, where we take our highest rated teachers and send them to our most struggling schools to turn them around. If you're thinking about things like expanding early childhood education and pre-K education, if you're thinking about integrating social and emotional learning into the curriculum, or changes in the discipline policy, or the early college programs where we make it possible for kids in high school to earn an associate's degree by the time they graduate and to work with industry partners. If you're talking about racial equity and expanding things like school meal programs, breakfast in the classroom, well, those are reforms too. And those latter things that I've enumerated are certainly reforms that I support and have supported very, very vigorously. And then, of course, there are issues that have come up in Dallas ISD, like the 2015 bond program, and the 2018 tax ratification election, which helped raise additional funding for our public schools. Well, I supported those. So the term reform is a bit nebulous, and I support the things that I just listed and the impact that they've had on opportunities for kids and on student achievement in Dallas ISD. And the reason I support it is because it's good for kids. It improves their education, improves their opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that being said, I'm actually glad that you made me pinpoint exactly what we meant when we were talking about reform. So glad about that. Now, last year, well, actually, it's been about 2 years now, more than 16,000 advocates registered on the Texans for Strong public school sites. I think it generated, 49,000 letters to the state legislator on vouchers and school funding. Now, in particularly, I want to direct this conversation toward teacher recruitment and retention, okay? And I want to talk about the rationale for attracting quality individuals to the teaching profession, which is, some people say, a difficult one, depending on the school districts, depending on the size of the school districts, whether it be large or small, right? Because of salaries is one reason, health benefits, another reason, and one huge reason, or one huge determining factor that a lot of people were choosing the career of or profession of teaching was because of loan forgiveness programs that especially the state of Texas was promising and fulfilled for teachers that met certain criteria. I'm not going to go into all of the intricate ins and outs of it, but these were the hiring incentives that calls for the brightest and the best teaching platforms and teachers to be attracted to the poorer or rural districts, particularly. And so this is one of the reforms that I want to kind of discuss in the beginning, because a lot of people don't know this, and I really did not go over your bio yet, and I should have done that. The Honorable Dan Mischke started and chaired his firm. He's a lawyer. He's chaired his firm of school partnerships programs from James W. Fannin Elementary School in Dallas from 2005 to, I believe, 2012. They did so well, in fact, that the program received an award with the State Board of Education. They got, I believe, a gold level award for community partnerships in 2011. Mr. Mischke also received the No Kid Hungry Award for his Shared of Strength campaign in 2014, the Closing the Gap Award from the Leadership ISD in 2017. He was a member of the Phi Beta Kappa. Okay, he received his doctorate in law, his Juris Doctorate from the University of Chicago Law School, which is one of the toughest law schools to attend. Honorable Dan Mischke has also been recognized by his clients and peers alike as the best lawyer in America for 14 consecutive years. So Mr. Mischke is no lightweight.
That's a list. That's not the single best, for sure. I didn't fool them that much, but they do have a list of lawyers that they evaluate and rank. But so it's best lawyers plural, and I'm honored to be on the list, but I have no illusions about being the best.
Absolutely, and let me finish this real quick. And also, now I know this is a fact. Now he also appeared in the D magazine for 8 consecutive years as one of their premier attorneys. And so This is why we were so fortunate to get him on this podcast this evening.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3.
Tonight, I want to kind of talk about teacher recruitment, retention. I want to also kind of talk about, get your perspective on public school enrollment versus charter school enrollment, and what are some ways that you are spearheading this movement to protect public schools.
Okay. Well, first on the issue of teacher recruitment and retention, I think it's fair to say that teachers have one of the most important jobs in the world, and it's one that we as a society do not do a good job of rewarding financially. And unfortunately, we have a national teacher shortage that I don't have the statistics in front of me, but smaller and smaller percentages of our college graduates or college students are considering careers in teaching. So there is a shortage. It's a national shortage, and it's sad because we need great teachers. The only way that our kids can succeed and for our country to succeed is to have great teachers in the classroom. So I agree with you that teacher recruitment and retention is something that we all have to focus on and do a much better job of, not only locally but nationally. And I think we're making strides in Dallas ISD on that front.
What's your perspective on the public school versus charter school, and let's not forget private school as well? Where do you stand as far as those entities?
Well, I have not been a fan of charter schools, and I think as most people know, charter schools are publicly funded, but they are managed not by an elected board, but by an appointed board, and they don't have to follow a number of different rules, state law rules. But I've looked at it from several perspectives. One of them is, are charter schools in the aggregate doing a better job than public schools, in the traditional public schools in the aggregate? So when you look at the big picture, we've created this second system of publicly financed schools. Are they doing better than the traditional independent school districts? And interestingly, TASB, the Texas Association of School Boards, had reviewed the A through F ratings of both school districts, charter school districts, and independent school districts, as well as individual schools. And they came up with some very interesting data. And I'll go over this breakdown. I'll try to go through it so that it's easy for people to follow. It is almost a chart, but I'll try to say this simply. So they found, TASB, in reviewing the 2018-2019 statistics on charter schools and independent school districts on a statewide basis, found that 25.1% of traditional school districts earned an A compared to 24.6% of charter operators. About the same, with a slight edge to traditional independent school districts. They also found, TASB also found, that 61% of independent school districts earned a B compared to 31% of charter operators. So the independent school districts more of them were rated a B by a lot, percentage-wise, than compared to charter school districts. And then with respect to C's, 11.2% of traditional school districts earned a C, compared to 22.3% of charter operators. 2.1% of traditional school districts earned a D, compared to 12.3% of charter operators, and 0.6% of ISD's, traditional school districts, earned an F, compared to 4.5% of charter operators. So just looking at this statewide data using the A through F system, the traditional independent school districts had 86% of them earning an A and a B, an A or a B, compared to charter schools where 55% earned an A or a B. So that shows that using the A through F system as one metric to determine which type of school is performing better, the traditional public schools districts in the aggregate are performing better than the charter schools in the aggregate. And then when you look at the other side of the coin, the charter schools operators had 5.6% of them were F rated compared to 0.2% of the ISDs. So on the lower end, there were a lot more charter operators percentage-wise than ISDs that were performing at the F level or the D level. So, from that standpoint, you have traditional public schools performing better than charter schools, again, in the aggregate, because you have to take into account the fact that there are still a number of charter schools that have performed at the A level under this A through F system. So you're going to find some charter schools that are doing well. But in the aggregate, we have this second system of public school funding that underperforms the first system of public schools. And to me, that's one reason why I'm not supportive of the charter school system. TASB had some other similar data where they broke it out by campuses, and the campus breakdown was pretty similar, although it turns out when you look at it on a per campus basis, the calculations were that 22% of charter campuses were A compared to 19.6% of ISDs were A. However, on the Bs, the ISDs were at 37.7% compared to 30.1% of charter campuses. And then when you go back down and you look at the Ds and Fs on a campus-wide basis, the charter schools had more F campuses percentage-wise and more D campuses percentage-wise. So when you take that data down to the individual campus level and then look at it in the aggregate, the charter schools, the second system of publicly funded schools is not doing better than the first system of publicly funded schools. So I look at that data, and then I look at some data that Tom Ratliff, who was the vice chair of the State Board of Education, had come out with several years ago, and I think this is updated by Mr. Ratliff or some other people who followed his analysis using the Texas Education Agency snapshot reports. The data I'm looking at here is the last one I was able to quickly find before this podcast.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3.
Which covered the 2013-2014 school year. And what Mr. Ratliff concluded based on his analysis of that data was that compared to charters, traditional ISDs had lower dropout rates, higher graduation rates, higher STAR, SAT, and ACT scores, that they had higher average teacher salaries, more experienced staff, and fewer students per teacher. And further, that the ISDs spent less money on administration and have fewer administrators as a portion of their workforce. So that study, I haven't seen it for the most recent school year, but that study also seems to at least support the conclusion that charter schools on the whole are not doing better than traditional public schools. They're doing worse on the whole. Again, there are always going to be in all of that data some charter schools that are performing well, and there's no reason why an ISD shouldn't look at some of the things that they're doing and seeing if they're the kinds of things that could be replicated to produce better outcomes for students in the traditional public schools. Like some things that charter schools do have longer school years or longer school days, and those kinds of things, might be worthy of consideration by an ISD, for an ISD to adopt those sorts of things. But so my feeling has been that when a charter school opens within the boundaries of Dallas ISD, they essentially dilute the resources and reduce the enrollment available to improve a Dallas ISD school to put up, a school across the street. And that does wreak havoc on the budgeting process. We would budget for so many teachers, and if we have fewer students because of a charter school, we don't, we have to deal with budget implications of not having the right amount of staff, and it makes it hard for an improving school district like Dallas ISD to do planning and to keep the good things going if a charter school is simply able to open up a location and say a brand new building right next to an apartment complex where lots of Dallas ISD students go to, and if they actively recruit students, you could have a situation where students are leaving a higher performing ISD to go to a lower performing charter school.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3. The Impact of Educational Leadership is an American podcast talk show in Dallas, Texas. ID3 gives an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to student success while exploring relationship and family issues in diverse settings.
So for all of these reasons, I've not been a fan of charter schools at all. Although I do recognize that if you see some of those charter schools that are doing really well, it makes sense to figure out what they're doing in terms of student outcomes. I see that having created this whole system, it doesn't outperform. In fact, it underperforms the traditional public school system.
Trustee Mishke, first I want to thank you for several things, for clearing up several misconceptions, and the way that you did it, I'm going to say that you unpacked it. You unpacked a concentrated issue, okay, and you gave it a solution. But not only did you give it a solution, you gave a solution with clarity, and with that, you gave a resolution, because there's a huge perception out there that Texas public charter schools are not held to the same level of, shall we say, accountability as Texas independent school districts or ISDs, okay? And what you just said, what I'm hearing is they are held to the same level of accountability regarding state assessments, regarding practices within some of the open enrollments. They're being held accountable with these enrollments, though they have different specialized treatments of their enrollments. Now, we know that because if the kid scores low or child scores low on some of these assessment tests, then they can kick them out. If they have behavior issues, they can kick them out. So, really, are the retention policies the same? But we know that they get the same level of money as well. But the thing that charter schools, and I'm going to say it like this, they're kicking public schools' butts and that is marketing, the marketing strategies. The way that charter schools market, from what I'm seeing, I'm no expert. You are. That's why we got you here. What are some ways that public schools can start marketing more effectively and using better practices and different settings to begin to leverage public schools with marketing campaigns? You want to take that?
Well, yes. Happy to respond to that. So, just to underscore your point, the charter schools are subject to the same accountability and STAR testing metrics that traditional public schools are subject to. And as I mentioned in that long monologue, the traditional public schools in the aggregate are doing better than the charter schools in the state of Texas. I should also point out that the funding is very complicated, but charter schools in the Dallas area actually are receiving state funding at a higher level than the traditional public schools like Dallas ISD is receiving from the state. And that has to do with the way charter schools are funded on an average, statewide average per pupil calculation that results in this higher funding for charter schools in the Dallas area. But even with the higher funding, the charter schools as a whole, and again I keep coming back to this, as a whole concept, because there are some charter schools that are performing well in terms of their academics, but there are many more charter schools percentage-wise that are performing badly as compared to traditional public schools. So they do a great job of marketing. There's no doubt about that.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3.
And I've, in the past, likened Dallas ISD to a sleeping giant when it comes to charter school marketing and competition. That charter schools would do substantial information requests from Dallas ISD, take that information and then use it in marketing. Things like student information that is subject to open records in some cases, And Dallas ISD has since stopped making it that easy to obtain student information to protect student privacy. But the charter schools are great at having the newer buildings, that have this curb appeal that many of our older school buildings, the average age of our school buildings is well over 40 years, don't have. And that, tends to make people think, well, there must be something special because this is an immaculate, brand new, building. And so they're able to leverage on that. They're able to pinpoint where they want to put their school. Whereas Dallas ISD, for example, the vast majority of our school buildings are going to be in the location they're at now. We can't get up and, move the school someplace. But if you're thinking about starting a charter school, you can pinpoint a location and try to figure out, how you can attract the most students by making the location as geographically desirable as possible for the targeted families that you're going after. So, but Dallas ISD, what can we do about it? Well, first, it's, the student outcomes, improved student outcomes, and our teachers and principals have done that. We are the most improved school district in the state of Texas. And we've also improved and expanded student opportunities. And things like our early childhood program, our early colleges, the dual language programs, the robotics courses, and extracurricular activities. We've done a lot of things to make Dallas ISD more attractive than it was, say, 10 years ago. We have all the choice schools and the magnet schools that can accommodate a lot of special desires where families can choose the school with the best fit. We have single gender schools and STEM schools. We've got some of the best schools in the nation.
That's what I wanted to hear you talk about. I was waiting for that. A lot of people don't know. I've been following you on social media. That's one of the reform movements I was mentioning. Trustee Michgay, you have been on it. You've been placing these charts on like Facebook, you name it, social media platforms, showing people where Dallas ISD ranks amongst the country. Can you enlighten us more on that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you start with the most recent list of top STEM schools in the United States, and Newsweek just put this out in September, that the top two in the entire nation are in Dallas ISD. And those two schools are located at the Townview campus. That's our science and engineering magnet and our talented and gifted magnet schools. But they are at the very top of that list in Newsweek in the entire nation. And those schools and several other of our magnet schools are listed among the very best in the whole country by the Washington Post surveys and Newsweek and U.S. News surveys, and they have been really amazing educational opportunities for our kids. But we've had so many pieces of data that collectively show that Dallas ISD is an outstanding school district. In 2014, the Dallas ISD had 43 schools that were on the improvement required list, 43 out of 200, about 30 at that point. total schools. And by the time we got to 2018, we brought that number down to 4. And that number since went up a little bit to 7, but we have a plan, and we know what happened. We have a plan to bring that down to 0. But 43 down to 7 on the IR list is great performance. Shows that our teachers and principals are doing a fabulous job. And then on the other end of the spectrum, back when, and this is 2018 when I calculated these statistics, the Texas Education Agency will give academic distinctions to schools. For example, a high school could earn up to 7 academic distinctions. An elementary school could earn up to 6 academic distinctions. But the data that I'm talking about is Dallas ISD had 36 schools that received all possible academic distinctions from the Texas Education Agency in 2018. The next closest was Houston, which is a bigger school district. They had 19. And then when you look at good school districts like Fort Worth and Austin, and San Antonio, they each had 1 or 2. We've had more blue ribbons, national blue ribbon schools in the last several years than any other district in the state. So many great things going on in our schools. I'll highlight one other one that I'm particularly proud of because it's recent, and that is at Jack Lowe Senior Elementary School. Here's a campus where 100% of the kids are economically disadvantaged. There are 25 different languages spoken. 88% of the kids are English language learners. And the school earned a national blue ribbon, became a national blue ribbon school, and was recognized at the state level as an A school. Now, this is a school with unbelievable challenges. It's in the Vickery Meadow neighborhood, which has traditionally been a higher crime rate in Dallas, had a higher crime rate in Dallas, and with everything seemingly going against that school, somehow through hard work and sheer determination and strong leadership, that school has been recognized as one of the very best schools in the country. And Principal Sandra Barrios will be going to Washington this month to be recognized by the Department of Education as one of the 10 best principals in the United States.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3. So
I could go on and on to talking about the great things that are happening in Dallas ISD. I'll share one other thing with you that a researcher named Robert Mundinger was able to do a study that provided some really interesting data. Back in about 2014, when Toyota was thinking about coming to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they wound up choosing Plano. And a lot of people said, oh, they must have chosen Plano because Dallas ISD is not a good school district. And Plano ISD is a good school district. By the way, Plano ISD is a good school district. Well, Mundinger researched results in Plano ISD and Dallas ISD, and he threw in Highland Park ISD. And what he researched in particular was the question of whether Highland Park ISD whether Dallas ISD is a better school district than Highland Park ISD. And he said to do that, you have to compare kids from similar backgrounds. And then he started out by saying the profile at Highland Park ISD is that none of their kids are economically disadvantaged. That's the official statistic from the Texas Education Agency. And he said, well, the way to test whether Dallas is better than Highland Park on these metrics is to compare kids with similar backgrounds. So you have to compare the non-poor kids in Dallas ISD with the non-poor kids in Highland Park, which happens to be the entire school district. And what he found was that on the 17 STAR tests that are mandated in grades 3 through 8, that Highland Park did better on 9 and Dallas did better on 8. Pretty much a push when you're comparing apples to apples. Non-poor kids in Dallas ISD, how they do compared to Highland Park kids. And then he went back to the original question with Plano, and he looked at those same 17 tests and said, you've got to consider apples to apples, and when you consider kids with similar backgrounds, the Dallas ISD kids who were not economically disadvantaged did better on 14 of those tests, and the Plano kids who were not economically disadvantaged did better on 3 of those tests.
That brings me to my next point. It brings me because I think we're about to hit a home run with this. I agree with a lot that you said, Trustee Ms. K. Now, I've seen in my visitations at the school board, I've read through the agendas. I read through, a number of agendas. I saw a number of pressing issues. And I sat back and watched you guys on the board, on the school board of Dallas ISD. Okay, I sat there and saw how you guys handled the issues. First, I saw how you understood the issues and that you respected the fact that you needed to position yourself to understand, then develop these issues to deal with. I sat there and watched you guys do that. To me, it showed passion, it showed compassion, it showed transparency, it showed competency, it showed value. Not only did it show pro-social behaviors and core value, but it showed value that was well defined. Okay? I saw how certain board members took risks to do what was right. But collectively, I saw self-improvement. I saw moral character develop. As I sat back and watched, I saw self-control. I saw planning strategically. Okay? And when I heard you talk, I heard gratefulness. Now, this is coming from a man who has served on so many civic and charitable boards and done so much in the community, so many endeavors. I mean, come on, you served on the board of directors of the American Red Cross of Dallas. You sat on the board with the School Finance Task Force of the Greater Dallas Chamber. Okay, you served on the board of directors of the State Bar of Texas. What motivated you to be a trustee, and how have you assisted the school board in navigating through this superpowered district that we call Dallas ISD? That's my question.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3.
Well, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. My father dropped out of high school in 10th grade when he was 16 and joined the Marines when he was 17. And he became very successful over time as an airline mechanic and then a supervisor. But I'm the first one in my family to actually go to college, and I went to a community college before I went to a state university. And I know the value of education and what it's done for me and in my life. And I want to make sure that every kid has the opportunity to have a great education. Every child deserves an excellent education, and I think it's a right that these kids, that all of our kids have, and that we need to deliver on that promise. The future of Dallas is dependent upon having an educated workforce, and we meaning the district employees, the teachers, and the principals are doing a great job in trying to make sure that every child has a great education and that Dallas has an educated workforce. For me, there's nothing more important in this city or in this country than to make sure that kids who attend our public schools succeed. We need to make sure that every child who comes through Dallas ISD, and the vast majority of them are economically disadvantaged, they're poor, that they come out of Dallas ISD with middle-class opportunities to succeed. And with all of the different initiatives and with the work ethic of our teachers and principals, I'm very optimistic that we will achieve that goal.
We are out of time. And with that being said, do you want to give us a takeaway from tonight's discussion?
Well, I think we all need to work together for the benefit of kids in our district to make sure that they have the opportunities to succeed. I'm really proud of our teachers and principals and of our administration for making Dallas ISD the most improved and innovative district in the state. I'm proud of the grit that they showed during the fallout from the tornadoes, how we moved 3,000 kids in a matter of days into new locations and continued school. 75% of the districts in the entire state are smaller than 3,000 kids. So in effect, our administration, our teachers and principals moved an entire school district in a matter of days. And just very, very incredibly proud of Dallas ISD, its employees and teachers, and we have amazing kids.
So we again want to thank you for this legendary podcast this evening. Tonight, our special guest, the Honorable Dan Mishke. I'm your host, ID3. Good night.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership talk show, hosted by ID3. The Impact of Educational Leadership is an American podcast talk show in Dallas, Texas. ID3 gives an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to student success while exploring relationship and family issues in diverse settings.